Today's episode is sponsored by the Florida Brewers Guild 2020 Craft Beer Festival on Saturday, March 7th. Join the Florida Brewers Guild for their annual event and enjoy over 300 beers from over 70 Florida breweries at Perry Harvey Senior Park in beautiful downtown Tampa, Florida. Tickets start at just $45 for general admission, which includes a commemorative glass and unlimited samples from some of Florida's best brewers. Go with a VIP ticket for $65 and get 1 hour early admission to the festival. Buy yours now by going to unitedwedrink.com/guildfest. The festival celebrates everything great about the brewing culture of the Sunshine State and is one of our personal favorite festivals of all time. So be sure not to miss this amazing event. Buy your tickets now at unitedwedrink.com/guildfest. Must be 21 to attend. Enjoy responsibly. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast that 9 out of 10 people will agree exists. Welcome to United We Drink right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I cannot hang when it comes to going out drinking anymore. I can admit that, and that's okay. I'm joined by my two co-hosts. First is a man who in his early days got his jollies off by wearing a drinking glove to beer fests. Here's Phil Palmisano.
Not only did it keep my hand warm and my beer cold, but it was also pretty stylish.
Stylish is debatable. Debatable. Next up is a gentleman that's feelings towards beer fests might be bordering on unhealthy. We have Joel Codner.
I feel like we should talk more about this glove. I forgot all about it.
I found a picture of you, myself, and a person to not be named from Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival the first year I wore the glove, Joel.
2010?
I think it was, yeah. I had it was before I even created the one-of-one Dos Beer Ego shirt that no one else ever had.
Was I there at that one?
I think you were. I think that was the first day I met you, actually.
Like, actually hung out, yeah.
Oh, memories.
And now that glove is pinned to someone's wall, right?
Yeah, I'm going to bronze it for Justin Clark at Cigar City at some point in time. He has like a little shrine. He's got that horrible picture of my sister and I hanging on the wall. Maybe
the candles
that's something
around
we
it
could
and
share
all.
with our listeners. My proposal photo to my sister. Thanks, Mom, Dad.
He's got Jobu there too. Well, thanks everyone for continuing to listen and support the show. We're recording in the morning once again, so I think it's safe to say coffee all around.
I have coffee, water, and Lagunitas hoppy refresher. It's like their hop water. I'm super excited to crack into that at some point in time, but I have a feeling the combination of the three isn't going to sit really well with my stomach.
Phil's going to spend some quality bathroom time after this show.
Possibly.
I've just got ice water, but I do have these little mini bottles of Malort on standby. I feel like these could kind of be a show thing now, where every time I start getting irate about something, I drink one.
There you go. I like it.
Which would be even better if this was a video podcast. Take a screenshot of yourself while you're doing it. So we'll send that out to our listeners. Make sure they know that you're really doing it. Phil, you want to tell us some news that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So keep in mind we are a beverage podcast this week. We have a wide range of beverage news. And, you know, guys, astronomy is also very important. This past week was a big one for the moon and gravitational pulls. First, people finally figured out that you can stand your broom up and the gravitational force will keep it standing on its own. Did either of you guys try that before I continue?
No, it looked like bullshit to me, and I was just like, I didn't even have the time for it.
I had a slanted broom, and it still did it. My wife was amazed, and she demanded that I try it, and yeah, whatever. Anyways, apparently, in addition to that, the moon is also messing with the circadian rhythm of coffee plants. According to an article written from Daily Coffee News, the moonlight is messing with the plant's rest. Jean-Christophe Bretler, if I mispronounced your name, you don't listen to this podcast, so I don't really care. A sea-red geneticist stated that coffee trees see moonlight as a form of stress. Simply put, the more stress equals less fruit. Less fruit equals less coffee. Less coffee equals less United We Drink morning recordings. Gentlemen, what do you think about the moon's week, and why is the moon just messing with us on Twitter, on Instagram, and our coffee?
Well, there was once a government project to nuke the moon, and I think we should. I mean, if we're getting back into Space Force or whatever, I say we restart this program.
Who would start it? Elon Musk or our current?
Yeah. Yeah, him.
Space Force.
And I mean, what kind of circadian rhythm does a coffee plant have when it's full of caffeine?
Good question.
Maybe we need to set up speakers in the plant fields and blast Wu-Tang at them. That might make them feel better.
That was a really throwback beer joke, but I like it. I mean,
thank you for someone getting it. My
Wu-Tang
time's up.
Coffee beans. Mike, what do you think? Good week for the moon?
Worst week ever for the moon. They're going to be talking about it on VH1. Does VH1 still exist? Or am I
think it does.
Dating myself there too? I mean, I've been hearing, I've only been into coffee for probably a year or a little more than a year now. So I don't know a whole lot about what goes into it, but I know I've heard of like issues with particular crops. There's a lot of shitty ways the growers are treated by like their wholesale buyers and all of this stuff that like is causing pricing of coffee to go up and blah 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 blah. I mean, to relate it to something within the industry that I know of, like vanilla has been an astronomical on an astronomical trajectory of pricing over the last 5 years. If crops like this are being impacted by climate change or whatever, I think that it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
But when you're talking the vanilla, I mean, typhoons in Madagascar, all of these giant corporations switching to natural products and getting away from extracts to be healthier and everything, like just the demand, it's a harder crop to grow. Like these are all factors, and like this circadian rhythm from the moon. I mean, it sounds like pseudoscience to me, and it almost feels like, just the cynic in me feels like it's market manipulation. I mean, remember like a year ago when they said there was not going to be any more bananas?
No.
I do remember seeing something referring to that.
Yeah, there was this panic, like, yeah, we're just not going to have bananas anymore. It's horse shit. I've got like 4 of them rotting in my kitchen right now.
Okay. Make
I'm
banana
just saying,
bread.
like there's always these fucking like articles to scare everybody, and then
that is true.
There's a risk for hashtag Team Coffee Beer with this. I mean, stressed out coffee plants don't do well for coffee beers.
Team Coffee Beer will survive.
All right, moving on to my favorite topic, close to heart, seltzer.
I'll catch up with you guys later.
And actually, I'm curious to see your thoughts on this one. In alignment with our topic this week, the Chicago Tribune reported last week that Chicago would be one of about 8+ stops for a Seltzerland traveling seltzer festival. Sort of first of its kind to a degree. Tickets start at $29 and VIP are $49. What the $29 ticket gets you is 3 hours of unlimited sampling of seltzer, and VIP gets you an extra half hour for $20 and a full 12-ounce can of seltzer. Other cities on the stop include Minneapolis, Brooklyn, Seattle, Nashville, Boston, Philly, Denver, and Austin. Personally, very surprised that Miami's not on this list. What do you guys think about seltzer festivals?
Austin, Massachusetts. I mean, they're capitalizing on a hip trend, so I mean, good for them. I think it was only a matter of time before something like this happened, and maybe this is even a little later than I would have thought with how long seltzer has kind of been a thing by now. The price seems like a really good price. For $29 for pretty much a regular beer fest ticket is unheard of nowadays. So like the VIP price is around where you're seeing GA prices on most beer fests now. And so I think it's probably something that people can definitely get their money's worth. I can see a number of these being absolute shit shows by the time the 3 hours are done, or 3.5 for those VIP people. I mean, overall, it's probably a smart business decision. They'll probably do well with it. And yeah.
I think we knew this was coming. Everything that people joked about 6 months ago is coming to fruition, whether it's Seltzer Festival, pastry seltzers. I mean, we're going to see seltzers in a slushy machine in about 5 minutes. So all that ridiculous shit that we joke about seems to always come to fruition. And I'm fine with the Seltzer Festival. I mean, it seems like an obvious thing at this point, but imagine how dangerously drinkable that is. Like, I feel like this should be a 1 hour festival. You run almost zero risk of palate fatigue. It's not like you're just downing sours and imperial stouts and IPAs all day. I mean, this is water, and I think it's going to sneak up on people pretty quickly.
I think that there is the ability to have palate fatigue. I mean, you still have lots of flavor in a lot of these things, and some of them are very sweet, and I think that that sugar can wear on your taste after a while. But in general, I do agree that it might. That's what I said. It could turn into a shit show pretty quick.
Yeah.
By the time it's all said and done, because these things are lower ABV and go down easy.
So I'm really, this is one I actually would like to put a bookmark in and revisit maybe in a few months once the initial festivals sort of go off, because I'm on the website right now and every city is a little bit different. Shocker, because distribution of product isn't the same across the United States. And you do have some local seltzers that will play into it. What I'm really curious to see is, I believe this was tried last year on a regional level in Orlando, Florida specifically, and they couldn't sell enough tickets to it. So outside of, basically this being a giant tender meetup, I don't know if people are going to pay even $29 for all you can drink seltzer. I think it would be a very social place. I think it's a great, night out activity, maybe to bring a group of friends or, possibly meet some new people and, sort of treat it as like a bar going experience. But it definitely has the ability to have the wheels fall off and get a little hairy pretty quickly, in my opinion.
But just being seltzers feels very self-limiting, because you're just going to go, it's like, okay, there's 100. It's like, how many grapes and watermelons and lime and lemon can I have? It's not like, oh, there's that brewery I like, and there's that brewery, and oh, I want to try that brewery, and oh, they, are we going to see like time tappings of special seltzers?
Yeah, there's no glitter seltzer, there's no like rare seltzer yet. But and outside of this past week, Evil Twin released some pretty cool flavors on the craft seltzer side.
Cool is debatable.
I mean, listen, he's doing what he does best, right? He's bringing
Making people talk, pretty much.
and he's bringing his spin to a segment of business that is very, very popular right now, and eventually we're gonna have those rare seltzers that people are trading for, that are maybe on more of a regional or local level. Right now, they just don't have that like clout, I guess.
I'm also looking at this website right now, and like there's only 4 of the spots that have actually been announced thus far. But as I go to each one, they have some of the people who are or companies that are pouring, and this is I'm going to go off on a design tangent right here. Whoever did this pretty much took logos of these companies, put them into Illustrator, and did the free draw thing to turn them into vectors, because they are so fucking pixelated, and they have the weird little things that happen when you just throw a picture into the live trace of Illustrator and then just go, yep, that's good. Like, it's so bad looking. If these companies are participating, just ask them for a vector of their logo or a single color high res PNG. Like, there's Crazy Asian Wild Seltzer, which, by the way, is a terrible name. Like, this is so bad looking, their logo, and I would be pissed off that this is the representation that they put my company as on here. Like, the Four Loko one looks terrible. It's Spritz. I kind of like that name, even though it's misspelt. Like, it's ITZ. I hate that. But this is embarrassing from a design point.
The design police have arrived, ladies and gentlemen.
I was going to say, can you go in and view the source code and tell us, like, if all the HTMLs and everything are good?
Sure, I'll get right.
Well, this is a fantastic.
This episode brought to you by Squarespace.
It isn't, just to clarify. Squarespace has nothing to do with this episode yet. Well, that's a perfect transition from the design police and seltzers into
it is a
final...
Squarespace site. I just looked in the code in the source.
Oh my god! All right, last piece of news. It was a calm Friday night with people waiting in line for their favorite haze can at Other Half Brewery in Brooklyn 2 weeks ago, when a salty seltzer drinker decided to stir up some issues while sipping on his favorite carbonated water beverage. After causing a stir with the patrons in line to buy their beer, the man, which will remain nameless because why would we want to promote some asshat, decided to throw his empty can at a woman in line. This did not go well with the line waiters, and several verbal confrontations broke out. The nameless man threatened to bring a gun back and shove it in several people's face. Sure, our seltzer sipper was a man of his word and came back with his Glock 19. Luckily, nobody was injured in the incident, and the local police were called. Our bubbly boy quickly found out that there are laws while drinking the claws, because pulling a firearm in New York could land this lad a $5,000 fine and possibly 4 years in prison. Is this the new normal, where we actually have to worry about waiting in line because some jackass is going to pull a firearm at people that they just disagree with them, spending their time in line for a 4-pack of $18 hazy cans?
Are we sure this guy didn't just pull the gun to open the next can of White Claw like everyone's been doing?
I mean, maybe that was his can opener. I don't know.
I'd like to talk about Phil's delivery of that story. It was
clunky.
Very poetry jam-esque without any, he rhymed some stuff but didn't rhyme other things. I was captivated by this. You might have a future in writing Dr. Seuss-esque books about seltzer.
Well, I read a lot because of my kid. Dr. Seuss, that is, not anything else.
Well, it's surprising this wasn't in Florida, for one thing.
Thank God.
we've had some just shit shows of lines for special releases, and I mean,
do we know that the
seen...
guy isn't from Florida because wasn't he an Airbnb like guest?
So which adds a whole other layer to, does he have a license to carry a firearm in New York? Because that could up his punishment even more.
He should talk to Plaxico Burress about that.
Mike going way back today.
I'm going way back with my references today.
You got anything on Joey Buttafuoco?
Maybe by the end of the show.
Speaking of lines, though, did you guys? Obviously, this is not the new norm, and we shouldn't have to worry about jackasses pulling guns on anyone waiting in line. But did you guys see the Pliny the Younger lines were 24 hours long?
Oh my God!
No.
First guy got there over 24 hours before the bottles were released.
It just seems so unnecessary because they have a good bit. Or do they cut off how much they have per day?
According to Twitter, they didn't sell out the first day. I saw several reports that there were still bottles available. Obviously, the lines were very, very long, but the limits made sense, and they were able to get the beer to a good number of people, from what I understand. And obviously, they have it on draft.
Yeah, the draft has traditionally lasted an entire month. That's what they're always shooting for. They're a smart business. I'm sure that they have made enough of this to really kind of go around and spread the wealth. So I get there's probably some people who are like, I want to be the first one to get the first bottles of Pliny the Younger. So there's those people who you're never going to change their minds about something. But other than that, you don't need to line up for that. I feel like you just go whatever time you want to go. There's probably going to be a line no matter what because it's just Russian River. So wait till you get in, you'll get it. I don't think that there should be a fear of missing out on this unless you're right at the end of the month.
Yeah, the local article I read basically said the gentleman was the first in line for the past X amount of years, and he wanted to make sure that he was the first in line this year. And because the bottles were being released, he wanted to make sure that it was a full 24 hours before the store opened.
I saw some screenshots of eBay, people trying to get $500 for them, but apparently no one was biting.
Yeah.
Good for those people.
Congratulations, we made it to the point where an IPA is fetching that much money on the gray/black market.
It's not fetching it. No one was buying it.
It's going for over $100. I'm seeing them close for over $100.
No. Well, I like Joel was saying, they were the ones for $300 to $500 that were not selling.
And that is it for the news.
All right. So, as has been kind of teased throughout the beginning parts of this episode, we're going to talk about beer fests today. I'm sure that many of us in the industry, not in the industry, at one point started going to some beer fests when we were getting into beer because it was a great way of trying a bunch of new stuff and in small pours and really just expanding our ability to try stuff. About probably 10 years since we've gotten into this, I think we can agree that things have changed considerably, whether good or bad. A lot of things have changed, and I think that we should discuss what the Beer Fest has become and where it's going. Is it going in a good direction or in a negative direction? So let's start with a guy who is very opinionated about Beer Fests. Joel, what were some of your first experiences with beer fests? And we'll go from there.
Well, the one that always stands out to me is the one I went to with you guys 10 years ago at Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival. I still feel that's the best one we have down here. And Larry Bell pouring Hop Slam every hour on the hour. That was all cool shit. And like you said, these festivals were places to try new things or just hang out and broaden our horizons, expand our palates, try styles, maybe because it was absolutely a beer wasteland here back then. I mean, maybe one or two breweries. Nothing local on shelves, nothing like that. I mean, if Flying Dog came to town in stores, it was a big deal. So, a beer fest was a great place to try more of what we normally couldn't get, and all in one place at one time. So it was ideal. And they weren't every weekend. Now there's like 4 a week, it feels like. I remember going to, I haven't done many since I've been with the brew pub, but I remember going to one last year, and then I meet up with one of the other brewers and we're shooting the shit, and he's like, "Hey, are you also pouring at the other one today?" And I'm like, "What the fuck? What? Like one town over, there's another festival today? That's ridiculous." So it feels like they become oversaturated. We have so many breweries here now, and it just feels like I almost want to stay away from those things at this point. There's a huge difference between working them and attending them. I mean, we can get into all that stuff. And a lot of them, seem to be put on by just these, it's South Florida, so take it for what it's worth. But there are like opportunists who feel like, oh, this is a trendy thing. People come to this. We'll put one on. They've never done one before and they have no idea how it works. Like the last one I did, they were giving everyone 16-ounce pint glasses for their festival cup. I mean, it's horseshit. And like I even go over to them like, are you guys serious? Is this just for the brewers or is this for oh no, it's for everyone. It's like, holy shit. And they contacted me again about doing it this year, and I was like, fuck you guys.
My first experiences with beer festivals were I think they were the New Times or whatever New Times was prior.
Yep.
Back I just turned 21. They were like downtown Hollywood, and honestly, it was just a way for me to spend $25 and get hammered, and then taxi home or taxi back to Boca, where I was going to college. And I started looking for them, and I started really paying attention to, I think at that point in time, there were only 2. But when I started opening my eyes to beer a little bit more, and that was honestly after the first beer festival, because I literally thought I was going and drinking Shock Top and Bud Light and Miller Lite. And then when I got there and I tried sort of the beers that were around, and at that point in time, we had Holy Mackerel, we had Native, we had Monk, or Inlet Brewing with Monk in the trunk. And there was like Shipyard and a bunch of beers with different flavors. And that was sort of the door cracked for me to get into the industry. Then Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival started up. I want to say it was the same year. And we went up to that, and it was just at a different level. And for me, those early years of Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival, they were a little bit more intimate. You were waiting in line downtown Jupiter just to get in, and it was just the circle originally. It was a really small area, and you'd walk around and sample out some different beers and have fun and enjoy your drinking gloves. And then it grew, and they moved it over to just outside of the stadium. But it was really a camaraderie thing for me. It was awesome to meet people like Larry Bell. That was one of the first places that I met Wayne Wambles of Cigar City and Tim Ogden at that point in time of Cigar City. That was the first place I ever had Hunapoo. Oatmeal Raisin Cookie.
That's right.
Like, there were killer fucking beers that we were having, excuse my language, that we weren't able to get anywhere else. And it really opened up the industry for me in South Florida as they have progressed, and I found my way. I started volunteering shortly after that and poured for brands like Narragansett and some other fresh beer at that point in time brands.
You and I poured
Summit
at that Hollywood festival at the racetrack, the horse track for them before. I was pouring brewery.
And I think I poured Summit that year, or whatever it was, whatever brand it was. It was really fun to go out and talk to people and meet people. And I have made some really solid friends, acquaintances throughout the years at beer festivals. This past year, I got to work Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival, popped in, and it was just as much fun as it was the first year for me. it's still camaraderie based, in my opinion. There's still some of the original OGs that are coming out, but there's too many of them, in my opinion. It seems like everybody's just trying to put their own spin on it. I do like these themed festivals, which hopefully we can talk about. The bourbon, bacon, and beer festivals, or the wine, beer, and spirits festival. I like something that's a little bit different than just like, here's your plastic cup, go get drunk.
Yeah, and I think that's what is becoming. You have to differentiate yourself a little bit. Oddly enough, I find that Jupiter, one that I'll make it straight across the board, that I really enjoy, that festival, has oddly been able to stay relatively the same and still be a good time. Like, I was pouring at that festival this year too, and it was kind of strange to me just how familiar it all seemed to me. You have practically the same setup every year. You have your silent disco every year in the same spot, and everyone seems to still be having a good time. They're still packed. I mean, the complimentary or not complimentary, the sister festival the night before, Field Beers, still sells out within a couple of hours, and that is their way of doing something different. But that's been pretty much the same thing for 12 years now too, is the beer and food pairing event, which is an amazing event as well. And it is strange that in this land where just the regular beer fest kind of goes like meh, that Jupiter has been able to stay relatively the same and still have a great turnout and an enjoyable experience at that. I didn't see any fights over beers at this particular one, which I have seen at some Jupiter events before, but I had a good time there, and the camaraderie is great. I get to hang out with some friends who I don't get to see very often, or just comrades in the industry, and it was great to see those people, like the Barrel of Monks guys, Oddbreed, hanging out with Dustin from Saltwater, you and Francis, and meeting new people. That's always a great thing too.
Joel, what are your favorite beer festivals that you've been to? I feel like all of us have sort of traveled as well as done things locally. I think we all agree Jupiter's, one of our favorites between the three of us. I really like the Treasure Coast Beer Festival as well. I think that's a fun one, and it has grown exponentially throughout the years. But outside of Florida, what are your favorite festivals to attend, or that you have attended in years past?
I'd say the best one outside of Florida that I attended was Savor in DC. It's really just incredible. I went there in 2011 with a friend of the show, Ed Roberts, and it's this big food and beer pairing, and it can devolve and get a little sloppy like any other festival. I at one point just stopped caring what paired with what, and I was like, yeah, I'll more of that cheesecake, and yeah, I'll have some of that. But it's you have to kind of, there's a little bit of a dress code. You kind of have to dress a little sharply, and the ticket price is a little bit up there, but it's definitely exclusive. It's a nice event, and it's indoors, thankfully, and you get to really meet. I met Kim Jordan from New Belgium there. Lots of big people. It's not just some rep that they send or some volunteer. I mean, you're really talking to the people behind these beers. I got to meet Sam Calagione there. I think I might have met Garrett Oliver there. Could be wrong. But just a really cool event, and I think everyone should have it on their list to check out at least once. I don't see going back to it, but it's a really well put on festival.
I have not been to Savor. It's definitely one that I want to go to. I think I talked a little bit about that on, I think, the Bucket List show. I've been to GABF as an attendee and as a brewery that's pouring there, And I think that the first time going there as an attendee, it's so awe-inducing because you walk into that grand hall, which is now even bigger. Even at that time, it was huge to just be like, whoa, look at all this. And we had a great time. And even my first time pouring there, it was a good time. And I think that everyone should do it at least once in their life if they really like beer. But it's so big, it's almost intimidating, I think now. So I don't know if I would consider those one of my favorites. I actually really like the festivals that Beer Advocate puts on, like Extreme Beer Fest. I've attended and poured at that festival. I've poured at that festival a number of times, and I know that the brothers have a reputation online that isn't necessarily positive to a lot of people, but God damn it if they don't take care of the brewers there. Like they've always been nothing but nice to me. They come around and thank every brewery individually for coming out. They have tons of volunteers there to give you a break if you need to go to the bathroom, grab a bite to eat, or just want to go and grab some beers. One of the best things they ever did was when they made brewery private bathrooms. I was like so happy about that. But then last year, I went just as an attendee to their Funk Festival in Boston. I was like, Sour Festival, I'm all about that. I asked the fiance, you want to go? She's like, yeah, sure. Weekend in Boston sounds fun, drinking some sour beers. And it was a great time. It was at the old site of the Extreme Beer Fest at the Cyclone-A-Rama. So it was small, intimate, not too crowded. Lines, I think Russian River was probably the longest line there. And it wasn't, I think we got a pour within like 3 minutes. So that's anything that I've been to that that Beer Advocate has put on, I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, I agree. The Beer Advocate festivals are great. The Belgian Beer Fest that they put on the year I went to pour, it was in
Maine.
Portland. Yeah, and it was great. Awesome old warehouse, really really cool vibe. Those guys do know how to put on a great beer festival. Extreme's always been fun. Savor Joel is one of my favorites. I really like, personally, when you look at outside of the brewery world, Big Beers in Belgium, which is in Colorado. And it's in a tiny convention room, and it is very brewer-centric, but it is extremely crafty. I sort of relate it to a Field of Beers or River of Beers, where it's a who's who. The spots close a year in advance. Really, really fun festival.
That's the one up in the mountains,
correct,
right?
Yeah. I want to say it's
Breckenridge or something.
They moved it to Breckenridge. The last year I went, I think it was in Aspen, Vail, one of those mountain communities. They actually outgrew.
Feel free to correct us.
They outgrew the facility and had to move it to Breckenridge the past 2 years, I believe. Great festival. Amazing festival.
It looks like a good time.
When you look at brewery festivals, Boulevardia, which is put on by Boulevard, was one of my favorite. Those guys were awesome hosts. And then one that's near and dear to my heart is Hunahpu Day. Been to every single one of them, either as a patron or as an employee. And I feel like that festival, while it has had some interesting stories come out of it, it is honestly one of the best, if not the best, in the Southeast. It's sort of the extreme beer festival of the Southeast. And I love that one. It's near and dear to my heart for many personal and professional reasons.
Same here.
Day also, I think, just has a special meaning to like the three of us and a number of other people, because of we just make a fun weekend out of it. We don't even get like crazy. We don't go to like the cycle event or anything like that. It's just hanging out with friends, going to with the Tampa Tap house, drinking spritzes, listening to Adele, watching like bad infomercials. We always come up with some dumb little thing that becomes the whole point of the whole weekend's focus, and have a great time. And Hunapoo Day is wrapped in there, and we have a good time with that, but it almost becomes a secondary thing at points to just having a great weekend in Tampa with all of our friends.
I feel like a total asshole for not thinking of Boulevardia, but it's like 9 a.m, so whatever. That was easily the greatest festival I've ever been a part of. I mean, I tell the story all the time that, people, so many employees of Boulevard, because it's such a huge company, they'd come over and talk to you and ask you about your beer, try your beer, just, kind of shoot the shit. And they were so polite and hospitable and just welcoming. And then you'd have other people coming up to the table going, "Thank you for being here." Like, "Oh, you work here? What do you do?" No, they're just attendees, and they're thanking you for being at their festival. I'm just the nicest people in the world. Such an amazing event. And then that whole like party afterward with like the Ferris wheel, and I think George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic were. It was amazing. It was just unbelievable. And then Phil, you're absolutely right about Hunapoo. Like both personally and professionally for me, because we would just go every year together or meet you there. You'd be working them, and they've definitely gone from like kind of the small festival but still very hyped and well attended to just like blowing up. I mean, now it's in a football stadium,
hockey stadium.
Oh, it's indoors?
It's indoors, so weather and temperature controlled, and hanging out on the ice after a Lightning game.
And also just to be a part of that 60 brewery collab a few years ago, that Hunapoo Day IPA. I mean, I felt like such a nobody there. I mean, and I was a nobody, but I mean, it was just such an amazing experience.
I remember you, because you and I were both there pouring that year for the brewery, our previous brewery, and you wanted to get there right at Mash-In. You were so stoked and excited to be a part of that, and even though we didn't have to be there that early, and I was like, part of me was like, I don't want to be there that early. I was like, you know what? You're super excited about this. Like, why should I get in the way of that? And I thought that was an awesome experience to be a part of that festival because of that.
Before we move to our favorite what not to do, I will say always check out your local Brewers Guild, State Brewers Guild, because typically they put on some really good festivals as well. And we have one coming up in Florida. The Florida Brewers Guild is putting on their beer festival in a few weeks. And that's honestly, when you talk about camaraderie, that really is the cream of the crop, because every brewer shows up, key players show up. You get to actually meet the brewers from the actual breweries. And most of the time, and I say most of the time, brewers are very happy to support their local Brewers Guild. So go out, support your local Brewers Guild at any state level. Look to see if they have their beer festivals. Ours is coming up in a few weeks in Tampa. It's the Saturday.
Sponsor of the show.
The Saturday before Hunapoo Day. So get out there, kick off Tampa Bay Beer Week right with the Florida Brewers Guild.
UnitedWeDrink.com/GuildFest.
Buy your tickets.
And you can get your tickets there.
Mike, what's your favorite thing not to do at a beer festival? Maybe top two.
As a how? Like as a patron?
Yeah, let's go patron.
As a brewery?
Let's go rules not to do as a patron, so that you don't look like, as my 7-year-old child would say, a noob.
Don't drink water. People who don't hydrate throughout those things or don't eat during those things, because a lot of them have food vendors there too. And at Jupiter, you have the Leftovers and Food Shack trailers making amazing food. We were right next to them and had all the great smells coming from their tent coming over to us. Eat something. Stay hydrated. Like, though, if you have rinse stations, don't just rinse your glass out with that. Drink that water and stay hydrated. Like, you have no idea what you're doing to yourself by not doing that.
I'm trying to make a list here off to the side because I feel like there's so many things. I mean, it's 4 hours of consuming alcohol, so etiquette just goes right out the window. And one thing you shouldn't do is just don't pregame. I can understand if you're like around the corner, at the bar waiting for the festival to open and you do a shot of JMO or something, but I've seen cases of Coors Light in line. Like, why? Right? You really have to prime that pump? Like, you got 4 to 5 hours of drinking ahead of you. Phil's nodding.
I mean,
yes.
we used to before Jupiter back in the day.
I know.
We also were not that smart back
No,
then.
no, we weren't.
I did have pockets in my cargo shorts full of Founder's Breakfast Stout back in like 2011 or something.
I do
whenever
remember
they came
that
down
one.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're an attendee, definitely don't block the line. Don't get to the table and just monopolize whoever's serving their time. It's cool to ask questions. Ask for what you want, get your sample, kind of step off to the side if you want to talk to somebody, but let everybody behind you through. And of course, this just devolves as the hours go by and people consume more. But, don't. I know you can do what you want to do and all that, but really don't untap your whole way through a festival. Like, you're drinking 2-ounce samples in mostly dirty cups for 4 hours. Like, this is not the place to rate and review. By the end of it, you're going to have palate fatigue. And I get if you want to remember what you're trying and maybe go check out that brewery at another time or something like that, but it's not the place to be a critic. Yeah, it's really not the place to be a critic. And if you're a salesperson, just please fuck off. We've got people to serve. Like, I had this guy. I'm in the middle of pouring, and he comes over trying. He's, have you heard about Oreos and beer? And I'm like, do you know where you are? This is South Florida. Like, it's a core brand for half of us. And he's like, well, like, I represent so-and-so. And wants to give me samples and everything as if I can't just get Oreos at the 7-Eleven around the corner. So I don't feel I understand a lot of people, I've been approached by brewery insurance people, brewery finance people, merch people. And I get some of that, but it's really not the place to try and sell me shit.
If you're going to do that, have the same approach that maybe you have as a person that's inquiring about the brewery, just in questions. Get your sample, stand off to the side, give them your sample, like, hey, here's your koozie, here's, my business card, here's this. Just wanted to introduce myself. I sell brewery insurance. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Something like that goes a million times further than if you're standing on the side trying to hound me, because I typically have a line of 15 people and I'm trying to give the best customer service to everyone there, not just you. Yep. Because for some people, this is their first experience of trying my beer. And I want it to be a positive thing, because beer is very situational, where maybe I come across as a, asshole, and you all of a sudden don't like my beer because the guy that served it to you was a jerk because I was trying to listen to a sales pitch from, insurance company X.
I forgot all about that happens at fests quite often. And another thing is, a lot of times people at these festivals pouring are not those decision makers that need to be talking to you, and you still hound them. They might be a sales rep for the brewery or a bartender for the brewery. The owner might not even be there. The manager who makes those decisions probably not there. So stop bugging those people in those cases.
How about, if you are a salesperson, I'll give you a little bit of free advice. Go to your local state brewers guild and advertise through your local state brewers guild, because that's the best way to impact the decision makers at your local craft brewery. Plain and simple.
Or have your members, if your business is industry related, and have a booth there.
Even better. My Do not stop with the pretzel necklaces. I'm tired of them. Nobody eats them.
This is after I said
at
eat.
some point in time, they just become a fashion thing, and I don't want to see you sweating all over your soggy pretzel necklace. And it's not cute if you attach a Slim Jim to it or a cheese stick that is sitting out in the Florida sun baking. Nobody wants that. You're rancid. You smell. Please stop doing that. Outside of that, I would say, I think you guys touched on all of them. It's really the pretzel necklace that kills me still. It really is. I just don't comprehend it. I've never done it. Eat, but don't eat that. That's gross.
There was a guy at the Jupiter Fest who was a walking charcuterie board.
I saw that.
Like
that was witty. I liked it. It
cheeses
was different,
and meats,
but I
and
wouldn't eat it because it's sitting out in the sun. It's gross.
yeah.
And there's also don'ts for breweries too. Like, don't over pour everyone just so you can get out of there. Like, if you don't want to be there, don't go. But I mean, you legit have some breweries who are, you know, if it might be like a 5 ounce or 6 ounce cup, and there's a little 2 ounce line where you're supposed to pour it to, and they're just topping everyone off so they can kick the beer and get the hell out of there. I mean, we know that happens.
Oh yeah. It doesn't always work too on getting you out of there fast. I've seen people who do that and they're there the entire fest.
Festival organizers, loud music is one of my major pet peeves. I don't like loud music because I have to scream on top of it. I would almost prefer a DJ playing, you know, softer music and have fun, you know, like play something. I don't need the latest, greatest.
Let the whole
cover
fest be
band.
silent disco.
There we go. Perfect. Because then I can actually talk about my beer and I only have the crowd volume to actually compete with. I think that there is a need for some music because it adds to the atmosphere, but it doesn't have to be, you know, the cover band playing Smash Mouth's greatest hit. Notice singular
And
greatest hit.
And if you're the brewery at the booth closest to the stage, it's just a living hell.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how you know the organizer likes you.
I think that's a pretty good spot to finish up on Beer Fest. Anyone want to have one quick other word before we move on?
I just think everybody needs to pace themselves and, you know, give breweries a try that you may not be familiar with. You know, don't just go to the usual suspects. Don't run to the hype stuff. Like you're going to find a lot of hidden gems. You know, so definitely try to plan your day as best as you can. Usually they give you a little map of, like, you know, where everybody is and you know, kind of broaden your horizons, try some new stuff, and don't take it too seriously. Don't feel like you need to rate everything.
That actually reminds me of a great story. Phil was there with me at GABF when we went there as attendees. We thought we were in line for Upland to try some of their sours, but we were actually in line for Upstream, who were right next to them, and we're like, "Oh, we're at your table, so I'll have your Grand Cru." It was probably one of the best beers that I had that day, and it was all by accident, by going and trying someone who I'd never heard of before.
And I think it's still a top 10 beer for me overall. Like, that is a beer that I truly, truly enjoyed. I remember going back multiple times for that beer that year.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about breweries who post photos of the lines they have?
It's kind of patting yourself on the back very vigorously to an extent.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I just feel like people should act like they've been there before.
Yeah. Well, it's time for last calls, gentlemen. Our point where we get to voice off on something unopposed and uninterrupted. I'll kick things off here because I have something just very quick and easy I want to say and positive. I want to thank friend of the show, Lance White from FRW Studios. He sent me over some mock-up stuff that I can use that he had handy for some 16-ounce can stuff. You are such an awesome dude. I wish we had more people like you in the industry. We've never met in person. I can't wait to someday be able to sit down and have a beer with you and talk beer, talk design. Cheers to you, man. I appreciate all the help that you've given me and to the show as being also a sometimes sponsor of the show. So thanks, Lance. Joel.
This goes to kind of a conversation you and I and some others were having last night, Mike. It's about pets. And as I started thinking about it, thanks to the edible I had, I don't understand pets that don't have like emotional connections or can like you don't come home to your fish and they're happy to see you. I don't understand these kind of pets. Like a turtle is a fucking rock with feet. Like it's not gonna wag its tail and like want you to take it. I don't understand these fucking pets. Get a dog or a cat. That's it.
All right, Phil.
A few weeks ago, I brought up my excitement for the new football league coming in, the XFL, because I had hope that the Tampa Bay Vipers were going to be a glimmer or a ray of sunshine in the state of Florida after years of supporting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a losing franchise. Outside of that handful of years that they were actually good. I was wrong. The Vipers are it's the Scooby-Doo character, like, oh, we're going to take the mask off and see who it is. Oh, it's the Buccaneers. It's like Buccaneer.
It's been one or two
Buccaneer
games.
light. They still haven't scored an offensive touchdown in 2 games. They finally scored their first touchdown. McFadden intercepted it, ran it back for a pick 6. Yes, I have watched both games. I do know the players' names. I am currently wearing the hat. I hope I'm heading to the game this upcoming weekend. So if you're in Tampa and you're listening to this on Thursday, I will be at the game on Saturday. Feel free to tweet me or hit me up on Instagram. I'd love to share a beer with you. Heading out with the Cigar City crew and supporting our local team. I really hope they can turn it around because the last thing I need to do is cheer for a third losing football franchise, even though FAU has sort of turned it around a little bit lately.
Which actually, Phil, you saying during that about tweet you or hit you up on Instagram, I realized that the last number of episodes, I haven't given anyone a chance to plug anything. So I will go ahead and do that now. Phil, do you want to plug
you
your
can follow me
Twitter?
At DosBeeryGhost on Twitter. My Instagram handle, which I will pass out now, is PPalmasano77. MySpace is still active.
And LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn.
Joel?
I am Florida DUH Brewer on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm Mike Loves Beer on both of those as well. And you can catch the show on our Twitter at United We Drink. We're on Instagram at United We Drink Pod. We're on Facebook as well. That does it here for this episode. We will be back next week with a mini episode, and then in 2 weeks, our main episode, we'll be talking about competitions, beer competitions. In the meantime, go buy a shirt, sticker, or button from our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store. Subscribe to the show on your podcast app of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever fine podcasts are found. For these two gentlemen, we will see you next week. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.